From the moment I could remember, my parents had always been my universe, my sun and moon, guiding every decision I made. My dad, with his booming laugh and overconfident charm, had the ability to make any worry feel small. My mom, gentle and nurturing, always had a way of softening the edges of life's harshness. I believed in them with a faith that was unshakable. I never imagined that the people I loved most could betray me, not like this, not in the way that would cut through my heart like a blade. It started when I turned 27, and finally landed a job that paid more than I had ever imagined. For the first time, I felt the weight of possibility settle into my hands. I could finally buy a small apartment, save for my own life, and start stepping into the independence I had dreamed of since I was a child. But there was one problem. I didn't trust myself to save large sums consistently. I was reckless with money, my impulses often stronger than my discipline. So, with what I thought was perfect wisdom, I approached my parents with a plan. "I want you guys to hold on to something for me," I said one rainy afternoon as we sat in the sunlit kitchen. The smell of freshly baked bread from the oven filled the air, mingling with the earthy scent of the rain outside. It's $144,000, rent money. I need it to be safe until I can use it to buy my own place. Dad leaned back in his chair, a teasing grin spreading across his face. "You mean to say you're trusting us with that much?" His laugh was loud, echoing off the kitchen walls, but there was a flicker of something behind it, something I didn't notice then. "Yes," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I know it's a lot, but I don't want to mess it up. You both have always been responsible. I trust you." Mom placed a hand over mine, her eyes warm and steady. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll keep it safe, just like we promised." The words wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. I felt weight lift from my shoulders, replaced by a quiet sense of relief and anticipation. I pictured the apartment I would soon own, the furniture I would carefully choose, the life I would build, all made possible by this golden promise my parents had given me. Dad stood up and ruffled my hair, chuckling. "Just don't come crying to me when I decide to spend it on a yacht, huh?" His joke was absurd, and I laughed with him, not noticing the brief glint in his eye, the tiny smirk that didn't reach the warmth of his smile. It was easy to dismiss. It always had been. We celebrated with a small dinner that evening. I couldn't stop smiling, imagining the future, imagining how this money would finally give me control over my own life. Every moment with them felt safe, familiar, like a shield against the unpredictability of the world. That night, I went to bed thinking that I had the most reliable, loving parents anyone could ask for. I slept with a sense of invincibility, knowing that my dreams were safeguarded by the very people who had nurtured me from infancy. Over the next few months, I began to plan every detail of my move: the small apartment with the balcony that overlooked the city skyline, the savings I would still accrue on my own, the steps I would take toward financial freedom. I called my parents occasionally about the money, not because I doubted them, but because I wanted to share my excitement. Each time, they reassured me with soft smiles and nods, promising that it was untouched, waiting patiently until I was ready. I didn't notice the subtle changes, the little dismissive comments about how money just sits around, or how life is too short to hoard. I didn't see the way Dad's laughter seemed slightly sharper when I spoke of my plans, or the way Mom's eyes flickered with unease whenever I mentioned the exact amount. I wanted to trust them completely. I needed to, and so I did. I went about my life believing in the unshakable security of their word. I dreamed, I planned, and I trusted. I had no idea that this golden promise, the very foundation of my future, was not as solid as I believed. The day I asked for the money back is a day I will never forget. I had rehearsed it 100 times in my head, every word, every tone, every expression. I imagined that I would feel a small thrill when I saw the check or the bank transfer confirmation, a tangible reward for all the years of trust I had placed in my parents. I never imagined the laughter. I walked into the living room, my heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and nerves. Dad was lounging on the old leather couch, a newspaper folded across his lap, while Mom was in the kitchen, her hands busy with dishes. I took a deep breath and approached the couch, Dad, I began, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. I need the $144,000 now. I'm ready to use it for my apartment. For a moment there was silence. Then he looked up from the newspaper, a glint of amusement in his eyes, and laughed. Not a soft, affectionate laugh, but a deep, rolling chuckle that sent shivers down my spine. You want it back, he said, still laughing. After all that time, you're asking for it back. I blinked, unsure if I had heard him correctly. My throat felt dry, and my stomach twisted painfully. Yes, I'm asking for it back, you promised. Dad leaned back, his laughter fading into a lazy grin, as if this were the punchline to a joke only he understood. Promised, sweetheart, come on, that's not really how money works. Things change, I repeated, my voice shaking. I trusted you. You said you'd keep it safe. Mom emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands, her face carefully neutral. She avoided my eyes, glancing at Dad instead, as if to measure his reaction before speaking, but she said nothing. Not a word. Dad waved a hand dismissively. Safe, sure, safe in the bank, safe for a little while, but you know life happens, investments fail, bills pile up, stuff like that. His words were casual, like explaining why it rained in April, but they hit me like a thunderclap. My knees felt weak. I sank into the armchair across from him, gripping its arms until my knuckles whitened. But you promised me, Dad, both of you. You said you'd never touch it until I was ready. He shrugged, almost bored. I did say that, didn't I? But promises are flexible. You'll understand one day. I stared at him, unable to process the betrayal. My mind raced through memories of trust, of laughter, of bedtime talks and shared meals. Every image now felt tainted, every word they had said to reassure me suddenly hollow. My parents, the people who had been my anchors, my guides, had let me down in a way I didn't think was humanly possible. I can't believe this, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. $144,000 gone. You just spent it. Dad's grin widened as if my pain were entertaining. Not spent exactly. Let's just say it's been invested in things that didn't quite pan out. Life, kiddo, life's messy. I felt a wave of nausea, my chest tightening as anger and despair collided inside me. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake him until he understood the depth of my heartbreak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I felt a cold, empty sort of rage start to coil in my stomach. This was no accident, no mistake. This was betrayal, calculated and casual, wrapped in the comforting guise of laughter. Mom finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm, though still distant. We didn't think you'd need it so soon. We thought you had time. I shook my head, disbelief mingling with fury. You did think I'd need it, that's why you promised. They exchanged a glance, almost imperceptible, as if sharing a secret I wasn't meant to know. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The trust that had once been unshakable cracked irreparably. My parents were not the protectors I had believed them to be. They were ordinary people, flawed and selfish, capable of laughing at my pain while I stood there, broken. I left the house that day, with my chest tight, my mind racing. I couldn't cry yet. Not out of weakness, but because a different kind of energy had begun to grow inside me. One of focus, of quiet determination. They had stolen my money, my trust, and my sense of security, but they hadn't stolen my mind, my will, or my ability to fight back. As I walked through the city streets, the rain beginning to fall around me, I promised myself something no one would ever take from me again, that someday, somehow, I would reclaim what was mine, and it wouldn't just be the money, it would be everything I had lost in their laughter. And so, the first seeds of revenge were planted, watered by betrayal and nurtured by heartbreak. Betrayal burns in a way that never quite fades. It simmers quietly beneath the skin, shaping every thought, every decision. After the laughter, the excuses, and the crushing disappointment, I felt something else emerge, clarity. Pain is a teacher, I realized, and it was showing me exactly what I needed to do. My parents thought they had stripped me of security and dignity, but in reality, they had awakened a part of me I had never fully known. A part capable of patience, strategy, and cold calculation. The first weeks after the confrontation were the hardest. I moved through the motions of my life with an almost robotic precision, masking my hurt with smiles at work, casual conversations with friends, even social outings. No one could see the storm that raged inside me. I refused to show weakness because weakness had been the luxury I could no longer afford. Instead, I began watching, listening, learning. My parents, in their comfortable arrogance, never suspected that their laughter had lit a fire I would one day use to consume them. I started small. I asked subtle questions about their finances under the guise of concern. How's that investment you mentioned? Did it work out? Dad's smirk never faltered, but his answers were vague, the kind that left loopholes. Mom, always careful with words, shifted uneasily under my gaze, revealing cracks in their otherwise confident facade. Every detail mattered. Every careless comment was a thread I could follow, a map toward their vulnerabilities. Simultaneously, I rebuilt myself from the ground up. I channeled my anger into professional ambition, turning late nights at work into a crucible for skill and discipline. I networked strategically, connecting with lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors, not to spend money recklessly, but to understand the levers of power they had used to control and deceive me. Each new connection was a brick in the foundation of my eventual return. My goal was not only to reclaim the money they had taken, but to assert my independence and demonstrate that trust, once broken, could be replaced by strength. At home, I maintained the appearance of normalcy. Calls with my parents were polite, restrained, almost cold. I never let them see the depth of my plans or the intensity of my focus. Every laugh they offered in passing, every casual remark about their carefree lifestyle, was logged in my mind. I visualized outcomes, scenarios, and responses. If revenge was to be exacting, it had to be deliberate, surgical, and undeniable. Months passed, I began to make small moves, subtle shifts that set the stage for later escalation. A lawyer friend gave me insights into property rights and investment pitfalls. A coworker in finance helped me understand how to trace mismanaged funds. I discovered patterns in their spending, flaws in their documentation, and gaps that could not withstand scrutiny. Each piece of information was a tiny victory, a quiet reassurance that the balance of power was shifting, imperceptibly but inexorably, from them to me. Yet the process was not without emotional cost. Nights were long, sleepless, haunted by memories of laughter and promises that were never meant to be kept. I wrestled with moral questions. How far could I go? Was it fair to expose them publicly? Could I exact revenge without becoming a version of the people I despised? Each question circled in my mind, but the answer was always the same. Justice would be mine, and it would be measured, precise, and final. I learned patience in ways I never had before. I learned to wait for the perfect moment, to strike when their confidence was at its peak, when arrogance made them careless. I began documenting everything, creating a record of promises, lies, and inconsistencies. Every conversation, every passing remark, was a tool. They had underestimated me, believing that anger would fade, that the betrayal would be swallowed like an inconvenient truth. But I had transformed my pain into a weapon, and I was ready to wield it. By the end of the year, I had a plan that was more than revenge. It was redemption. The $144,000 was the spark, but the true goal was restoration, of my self-respect, my security, and the control they had so thoughtlessly stolen. I could feel it in the marrow of my bones, a sense of inevitability. They would pay, not because I sought cruelty, but because balance demanded it. And so I waited, silent and calculating. My resolve hardened. The long game had begun, and I would not falter. Every moment of betrayal, every mocking laugh, every dismissive glance, they were all investments. Storing power for the day I would reclaim what was mine. The fire inside me was no longer chaos. It was a plan, a promise, and a storm ready to break. The day of reckoning arrived quietly, without warning, like a shadow falling across the carefully constructed lives. I had waited, planned, and watched, and now everything aligned perfectly. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about restoring the balance they had shattered, proving that betrayal carries consequences, and showing them that I was no longer the naive child who trusted too easily. I began the morning like any other, calm, collected, carrying the weight of years of disappointment but the power of meticulously gathered knowledge. The $144,000, though technically unrecoverable in its original form, had been tracked, traced, and replaced through legal channels I had painstakingly set up. I had prepared a methodical path, ensuring every step was indisputable, undeniable, and irreversible. My parents would have no room for excuses, no space for laughter, no escape from accountability. It started subtly. A casual lunch invitation that seemed innocent. A suggestion to meet at a familiar family restaurant. Dad, confident and oblivious, accepted immediately. Mom hesitated, as she always did, sensing something in the air that she could not name. But neither suspected that this gathering was not social. It was the stage for justice. As we sat at the table, the conversation flowed as usual at first. Dad regaled stories with his booming laugh, the same laugh that had once mocked my trust. Mom smiled politely, interjecting occasionally, carefully maintaining the illusion of normalcy. And I listened, every word, every gesture, every subtle indication of arrogance or carelessness became ammunition for the revelation that was coming. Then the moment arrived. Calmly, I slid a file across the table. The leather cover was unassuming, the weight inside significant. I think it's time we reviewed the investments you claimed were lost, I said softly, deliberately. My voice was steady, controlled, but underneath lay the power of years of planning and simmering anger. Dad picked it up, flipping through the pages with a growing frown. The documents were meticulous: bank statements, investment records, legal filings, and contracts showing the path of the money, all verified and undeniable. Mom leaned in, eyes widening, her hands trembling slightly as she recognized the depth of the evidence. This can't be right," Dad stammered, his confidence faltering. "These aren't, they are." I interrupted gently, letting the truth land with deliberate precision. Every cent of the $144,000 was accounted for, and your claims of mismanagement were false. The money was never lost, it was withheld, ignored, or misused for your own convenience. And now, through proper channels, I have restored what was mine. For a moment, silence fell over the table. The bustling noise of the restaurant seemed to vanish, leaving only the weight of betrayal and the power of consequence. Dad's face went pale, his arrogance stripped bare. Mom's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but there was no excuse she could offer. I had anticipated their every defense, and the evidence left them powerless. I leaned back, letting the moment linger. "I trusted you once," I said, my voice soft but sharp, "and you betrayed me. But I've learned that trust without accountability is meaningless. Today, accountability arrives." The aftermath was swift. Dad, humiliated and exposed, could not mask the embarrassment as whispers and glances spread among the few other diners nearby. Mom, normally composed, shrank under the weight of truth. There was no shouting, no chaos, only the quiet devastation that comes when reality cannot be spun or laughed away. My revenge was neither cruel nor violent. It was complete, precise, and inescapable. As we left the restaurant, I felt a strange combination of relief and sorrow. The money was reclaimed, the truth revealed, but the bond with my parents, the naive, trusting love that had defined my childhood, was gone forever. It could never be restored. And yet I felt a powerful sense of triumph, the triumph of reclaiming agency, of proving to myself that I could protect what was mine, and of showing that betrayal, no matter how personal, cannot stand unchallenged. In the weeks that followed, life unfolded with an unexpected serenity. I moved into my apartment, furnished it with careful choices, and began building the life I had imagined for so long. The $144,000 was no longer just a sum of money. It was a symbol of my independence, my resilience, and the personal strength forged from heartbreak. Sometimes, when I look back, I think of my parents' laughter and their empty promises. I do not feel hatred anymore, only clarity. I have learned that betrayal is not just a wound, it is a lesson. And the sweetest revenge is not merely in the punishment of those who wronged you, but in reclaiming yourself fully, completely, and with dignity. I am free now, not just financially, but emotionally. The laughter that once hurt me is gone, replaced by a quiet confidence that I will never again allow anyone to undermine my worth. The fire that betrayal ignited within me has cooled into strength, and in that strength I have finally found peace.